Eternal God, our Father, we thank you for the privilege now of coming together that we might study the pre-budget of God for Solid Waste Authority. Ask that you would guide us, direct us, give us insight and understanding, that we might, our Father, make best decisions. For it's in Christ's name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
We stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Welcome to our pre-budget workshop. I'll turn it over to Ms. Jan Bidding.
Good afternoon. Just want to start by, of course, restating what I said in the email the other day. Purpose of this workshop is for us to kind of take a look at, our budget and our budget process for next year. I want you to feel comfortable, please, asking questions, stopping us. We want your input. That's kind of our purpose of this meeting today, is to get your input and your direction on where we're going for our budget for next year. I just want to kind of start off with a little bit of how we go through our budget process. We prepare two budgets each year, a capital budget and an operating budget. Our capital budget is a 5-year budget that is for our capital items, meaning our equipment that we're going to purchase, any projects that we have going on for the next year. And it's funded primarily from those designated accounts. We do have some items each year that we call it kind of our wish list of items. Maybe sometimes it may be a welder, it may be a financial software upgrade, different things like that we put in there that will only be funded or only be purchased if funds are available. That comes from our undesignated funds. So that's kind of what our capital budget is. Like I said, it is a 5-year.
And that's a rolling 5 years, so you update it every year.
That's exactly right. We go through it every year. And they take a look at each piece of equipment each year to determine if it's something that they can push out a year, that type of thing. We have already gotten the capital budgets back in from each department, and I'm in the process of putting that together now, as far as putting together our 5-year capital. But this meeting, we want to kind of focus more on our operating budget, and that's what staff is currently working on. I sent out to them a week ago the information that I send them each year for their operating budget. I give them a breakdown of what they spent in 2014, their total expenses, what they've spent 6 months of 2015, and what's budgeted for 2015. That way they can take a look at where they ended up at the end of 14, where they are in their budget for 15. So as they're preparing their budget for 16, they can kind of increase, decrease where at all possible. Like I said, they can go through it more thoroughly. We provide the personnel costs to them and those type of things, but everything else, like I said, they'll take and they'll go through line item by line item to analyze. And they're in the process right now of putting those together. So I don't have an operating budget figure for that, but understand that that budget is funded through our revenues. Our revenues cover our operating expenses. What I've handed out for you today, of course, is a packet. And if you look on page 1 of this packet, it has a summary of revenues. What I try to do each year, one of the first things that I try to do, is I take a look at our revenues. I go through an analysis, same type of thing almost, really. I take a look at the first half of 14, first half of this year, 15, and then I also look at the second half of 14 to see if there was any growth from the first half to the second half of the year, to try to give me an estimate on where we anticipate finishing up this year, where we'll be, what our tonnages will be at the end of this year, as well as where our revenues may be at the end of this year. And I use those estimates as our budgeting tool for our revenue for this next budget. As you can see, as we take a look at this, I do have an increase in there for tipping fees. Page 2 of this packet gives you a breakdown of our tipping fees, and it's primarily coming from our solid waste and our mixed construction. Due to the economy, increase in the economy, we are, I do have an increase in there, because we currently are a little bit above what we budgeted for this year in both our solid waste and our mixed construction. So I have an increase built in to offset or to show you that increase that we have received this year so far. It's about a 2% increase in solid waste and about almost a 6% increase in mixed construction. The only other real increase we did have was in shingles. We did see an increase in our shingles this year. As you can see, our yard waste is down a little bit. I did have to decrease those tonnage. So our projected tonnages are in the column that says projected tonnage to FY16. I use that to generate what I have there for our tipping fee revenue. So we do have an increase in our tipping fee revenue projected. Our recyclable material sales, we have a decrease of about 2%, and that's where our biggest hit is this year. Like I said, I've mentioned to you at several of the board meetings, the prices are just dropping drastically. I had gotten a phone call from Jeffrey Rogers at Waccamaw Metal a couple weeks ago about the prices in our scrap metal. He'd said that there would be about a $70 decrease, and he was correct. When he sent the prices yesterday, it went from $90 a ton to $23 a ton. He was very generous and was willing to offer us a local market price of $80 a ton for the month, which was extremely generous, I felt like. Yeah, we have a contract with him. And so, like I said, he wasn't obligated to do that. According to the contract, should have taken the $23 a ton price, but he was generous enough to give us a local market. So that's going to help us a little bit this month, with that.
In his contract, does it state, did you say best?
Your mic, use your mic.
Did it have, in his contract that?
The contract he has is based on the AMA, so what the American Metals Market, so whatever, and percentage of it, we get a percentage of what the AMA is. And whatever it is, I think last time it was 120% of AMA. So if the AMA comes out every month, it's sort of like our yellow sheet with our recyclables. When that price comes out, that's what he's got to pay us. This month, he chose to pay us a lot more than what he was contracted to do so. But the metal prices are dropping drastically. And what typically happens, of what I hear from the people at Sunoco, it's not me saying it, is that when the metal market drops, the recyclables follow.
You think this is a one-time situation with him paying us?
I'm assuming probably so. He will only be able to do that for so long as well. Like I said, he was aware. Like I said, he let us know that the prices were going to drop like they did, and so he's continuing to kind of talk with me, let me know where things are going. He said he doesn't see him coming back up anytime soon. He said it'll probably be up and down for the next 6 months or better. So when and like I said, that's just with the scrap metal, but we're seeing it with all the material. We're seeing a big decrease in the fiber prices. Just came in yesterday as well, and we've got another decrease in our cardboard price. Same thing with our newspaper. So we're seeing it across the board with all of our material. The sales, like I said, the problem is like I said, when we have that kind of decrease, we're seeing it in our prices, but of course not in our volume. So it makes it very difficult. Like I said, when you lose volume, like we did last year when we lost the C&D material, you can make cuts easier, by cutting employees, by cutting some other expenses. When you have a drop in prices, we've cut. Like I said, we've made so many cuts and cut so many places that it makes it difficult to recoup that loss. So like I said, since we have budgeted a 2% decrease in our recyclable material sales for next year.
Which line item is that on this?
That's on page 1, and it's the second line item.
And while y'all looking at page 1, I want to give you something just to look at. If you look at the total on page 1 on FY15, that is the number we budgeted that we thought we would be at this year by year end in revenue. Now we're saying that we think we're going to be somewhere around $12.8 million by the end of the year, because that'll be our number for next year. With a few changes, but it'll be somewhere around there.
Right.
The second line item on the first page represents a 2% decrease
Yes, sir.
from what year to what year?
From 15 to 16. We had $3 million budgeted in 15. We've got $2.4 million
Okay.
in 16.
And then you were talking about increases elsewhere.
Yes, sir. If you look at the first line item on page 1, the tipping fees, we had $9,118,000 for 15, and we've got $9,416,000 for 16.
And that's because you raised the tipping fee.
That's not because we raised the tipping fee, because we expect the increase in volume.
And that was 2%?
It was 2% for MSW and about 6% for C&D. Tonnage. That we increased the tonnage.
Okay, so that goes over to page 2. You see
Yes,
that?
sir.
The
You see
2% in volume of MSW and a 6%
In C&D.
mixed construction, which is C&D,
Yes, sir.
and that equates to
It's about,
combined figure?
it's about a $300,000 increase in tipping fees.
Okay, what, just off the top of your head, is that, what percent is that? If you don't have it, that's okay.
3%.
So that's up 3.
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Our interest earnings, as you can see, I've got that down just a little bit. We increased it this year because we knew that our investment, the way they were investing, our money was changing. And so we have not quite reached what we had anticipated for this year. There again, with the market kind of going up and down. So I did decrease that a little bit based on what we have been getting this year. Waste tire rebate, like I said, that we have been getting a little bit more money off of our waste tires from the state. So I did increase that a little bit. Our container rental revenue is down a little bit. We had, like I said, we've lost a few customers this year, so that is down slightly. Landfill gas is down. I talked with Stephanie to see if there was any way we'd be able to recoup any more for next year, and she didn't anticipate any changes. So we had to decrease that. C&D Recycling, they're going to meet their budget for this year, so we kept that the same. Our e-waste processing fee, like I said, that's a little bit lower than we had anticipated, which is, like I said, you know, that's the money we take in for the electronics and things that come in. And then, of course, the store revenue, which we did meet that last year. We're going to meet that this year, so we kept that the same as well. So overall, you can see that we're looking at a $12,861,100 in revenue is what we anticipate right now with no changes, no additions. If you'll flip over to page 4. At the top, you can see where I have that listed up there at the top, where we took 15's revenue and 16, the difference being $327,000. That's with no line items changing whatsoever. If not a single line item in our budget this year changed, we would have a deficit of $327,300. We know the other items I have listed here are given changes. We have a increase in personnel cost of $161,000. That's due primarily, of course, to our increase in retirement, increase in workers' comp, and increase in insurance. We also, of course, like I said, we've got our step plan and FICA built into that as well. So that's a given, and it's about a 4% increase over last year. And we automatically build in a 20% increase in workers' comp, 20% in insurance. And we know our retirement's going from 10.9% to 11.06. Those are given. Like I said, those are just your automatic given. The next line item is our increase in closure and post-closure and construction costs. As I mentioned earlier, like I said, I increased the tonnage for MSW and C&D. So for every ton that we increase our tonnage on, we also are going to be putting aside more money for those future costs. So therefore, like I said, when that increases, those costs also increase. The waste disposal fee increase is the $2.25 we send the county. There again, when we increase the tonnage and we receive more tonnage, that's $2.25 on every ton that also goes to the county. So that cost also increases. And then the last item I have there is our depreciation cost. This depreciation increase is based on equipment that we purchased this year, not on anything we're purchasing next year. We don't start depreciating it until next year for the items we've purchased this year. So that's an automatic increase because we've already purchased these items. There are a few items that Esther and Bill both have kind of bumped out. Esther had a couple Trailblazers that she's not purchasing this year, that she's bumped out to another year. Bill did the same thing with the skid steer. He bumped it out. So we did save a little bit in depreciation by them not purchasing them in 15 and bumping them out to 16. But those are given increased costs that we know we're going to have. And like I said, they'll go through and they'll analyze each line item. And I took a look over the past 3 years just to see where our operating expenses have been. And we have not had, our increase from the past 3 years has been 1.3% that we've gone up on our operating costs. And when I looked, actual operating costs. And when I looked at the CPI, the average is 1.8%. So we're doing our job and trying to maintain our operating costs, cutting things. And when you figure automatically a 3 or 4% increase just with personnel costs each year, the fact that we're only seeing an overall increase of 1.3%, we're obviously cutting costs other places, every place we can. And like I said, and that's what, we've met as a group, we've met a couple different times to try to, go through and look at each division and look at each department and try to figure out ways that we can cut costs, ways that we can maybe generate more revenue, generate new revenue, that kind of thing. We've sat down as a group and we've tried to look at what we can do different. And like I said, they haven't really gone through their operating budget completely, to give you an accurate figure. But as you see on the last item on there, we're looking at $783,511 that we need to gain back and break even, to balance our budget this year. That's what we need to find to balance our budget. The staff has some recommendations, and like I said, I'll kind of come back to those when we get through. Esther and Bill have each kind of put together just a little presentation to kind of go over as well. Anything new that they're looking at for next year, any ideas that they have in their department, their division, to try to offset some of this deficit here as well. So I'm going to let them kind of talk about what they've got going on in their divisions. Then we'll come back to that, so that way we can really get into discussion on our recommendations and any ideas that you may have that, that would also help us get a balanced budget. Because when I come back to you on March 11th for our budget workshop, we'll have a balanced budget. We have to have a balanced budget, and we'll have one for you. I want to make sure I have your ideas and your recommendations and your input and support on it. So I'll let Esther,
Can I ask a question before
Sure.
you go ahead? Going back to personnel costs, the workers' comp, that's 20% is a plug number.
yes, sir.
Can you tell me the difference between last year and this year, the increase in workers' comp?
I don't have those with me, but I can get that for you.
And I'd like to know what that overall number is. I mean, I hear every month about our great safety record. I would think that, we ought to have a pretty good loss ratio and.
And we do. They do a really good job. It's the overall costs that are starting to go up with workers. It's the rates they're charging for, the different workers' comp codes. Those are the things that are changing. We are getting I can't even think what the term is. We are getting a better, experience modification. Thank you. We are getting every year. But like I said, when their rates are increasing, then we have to, that's why we automatically budget, plus not knowing what our year's going to be. It takes that one accident, that one thing to happen. So we've always made it a policy to kind of budget a 20% increase. And usually that's based on our actual. We take a look at what our actual was for 14, and that's where we base our 15. We do a 20% increase.
Is that ever shopped?
I'm sorry?
Is that ever shopped? Your workers' comp shopped?
We just we go through the state. And I'm not sure if we're required. I'm not sure either.
Lance, it was kind of hard for me to understand the workman's comp being from the private side and dealing with workman's comp. The county government's a little bit different. Actually, they pay for most of it themselves out of our checkbook when some of those things happen. So it's not that we just turn in an insurance company and walk away from it like you or I would. In the private side, we have to write checks.
That didn't happen in the private side either.
Yeah, well, I mean, you
you don't
don't
walk away
necessarily
like that.
walk away from it, but I'm saying,
Take it from
if
me.
there's a settlement or something, the insurance company picks that up, and then next year your rates go up. It's a little bit different on this side, so you might need to explain that just so you'd understand how it works.
Right. And we also, of course, there's some companies out there that aren't required to have workers' comp insurance. And, we're lucky we don't have a long list of them, but we do have several that we use. Our option to that is not to use them or require them to get workers' comp insurance for us to use them. Well, we kind of took a look at that, who we were using and would that be beneficial? And we felt like it wasn't, no more than probably what we're paying. It wasn't really a benefit to us. So we're constantly looking at ways to
Those are sole proprietors? or
Exactly,
numbers?
yes, sir. Yes, sir. And so, like then usually it's the same ones we're using the same ones every year, but we do try to take a look at that as well, see if there's something we could change that maybe would be more beneficial to us. But I'll definitely get you the percent of change.
Thank you.
Back to the e-waste there, I know at one time they were trying to get the manufacturers to help us out with the e-waste costs. Any help there at all, or?
Not as of yet. The state is still working through their new regulations. The last I heard, the group that's supposed to be set up to pretty much umbrella the manufacturers so that they will have their responsibility of what they're supposed to be recycling as manufacturers has not been finalized yet, has not been set yet. Until that's set, the manufacturers aren't paying anything.
So we're
They
not
have-
getting any
yeah,
help?
they're-
Yeah.
No, not as of yet.
Question, please. Is the way to understand the last sheet is that you anticipate $327,000 shortfall in
Use your
revenue?
mic. He just knocked on the window back there.
Is the way to understand the last sheet that you anticipate $327,000 shortfall in revenue? And whatever the summation of those four items are, as an increase.
As an additional shortfall, yes, sir. The 327,300 would be if we didn't make any changes whatsoever to any line items, not to personnel costs, to nothing. If nothing changed from last year's budget to this year's budget, we would be short 327,300 if there were no changes.
I get that. I'm
Right.
trying I'm trying to understand how you arrive at 783.
Okay? Then with these,
The below items are not revenue,
no, they're
they're-
additional cost,
cost. So
additional
those,
expenses.
those are costs that we have to cover. And the combination of decreased revenues and increased cost totals a shortfall right now without any changes of some $783,000. Is that correct?
Yes, sir, that's correct.
And of course, not that you don't, we do recognize that depreciation is not a cash item. That might be useful later on in determining, I mean, it's not out-of-pocket cash. Where do we put that expense? I mean, is that set aside?
It is in their operating expenses. Each department has that as a budgeted figure in their operating expense.
I understand they're charged with that depreciation, but we don't pay that to a vendor like we do the others.
No, it's money that's going into equipment replacement for future purchases of equipment.
So it's in one of the restricted
It's going-
accounts.
Yes, sir. Similar
So-
to like your closure and post-closure, we're
Yeah.
putting that money into that,
So if we
Equipment
have to
placement.
claw back, that might be one of the first ones that we would go to.
and that's something we've looked at, but I'll be honest with you, that account runs short as it is because of the fact that we used to have interest, a large amount of interest going into that account for, you know, when we put in an equipment replacement, we put it in there for what we purchased it at today. And we may pay $500,000 today for that piece of equipment, but 5 years from now, when we get ready to purchase a new one, now it's costing us $700,000. So somewhere along the lines, we have to recoup that $200,000 difference. Normally, in the past, we were able to maybe do that with interest because we put interest into that account. When the interest rates were higher and we were putting a larger amount of interest in there, that hasn't been the case for several years now. So therefore, you know, we're eating away at that account to cover those additional expenses.
What is the rough balance of that account now?
I think it's about 5 million. Is that what it is? I think that's about what it is right
So
now.
there's 5 million. I'm not saying that it's a gift basket sitting over there to grab.
Right.
I'm just saying it's $5 million that's been restricted that was a non-cash item. It's kind of like saving for when you got to replace the equipment.
Exactly.
Obviously, the equipment has to be replaced. We'd prefer and have a history of paying cash instead of financing. So we have that there as a
Exactly.
resource. These others are dead payouts. I mean, you have to
Exactly.
make them.
Exactly.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Yes, ma'am.
When the county last year or the year before went through and looked at all of their insurance and changed a lot of that and made sure that when someone got to be a certain age and they went on Medicare, they quit paying the full amount of their insurance and made sure that that transition worked smoothly. Have we done that?
Well, we have, I'm not sure, I can't remember exactly how our policy works. Like I said, ours is a little bit different for you're talking about for retirees, correct? Okay. I want to say up to a certain age, when you retire, is paid at 25%. Ours is, like I said, ours is based on the number of years you were here as to what percentage we'll pay. You know, and that's the way it goes. And then once they reach, I think it's the Medicare age, I think maybe then we don't pay anymore at that point. I'd have to get our policy out and take a look at it. I'm sorry, I'm not sure.
Okay, well, there were a lot of different things that the county looked at because they had some where when they got to be Medicare age, they were still paying the full amount instead of letting them go on Medicare and easing that off to something different, which was, the county has a lot more employees than we do, which
Right.
turned out to be a huge cost. And there were some things that the county implemented that really didn't hurt their employees, but it saved an awful lot of money. And it might be that that can be some of that. Another thing they did was change their policy from when they hired someone. They didn't give them the same amount because they found out it was not sustainable
Right.
for a company to do.
Our OPEB. Oh, in our OPEB, yeah, like I said, that's what our post-employment benefits. And like I said, and we are fortunate, like I said, ours is a little more streamlined, because we had looked at their policy as well to see if we wanted to make changes in accordance with theirs. And like I said, I'd have to get our health insurance policy that we've got. Like I said, we looked at it just not too long ago. But it is something we could definitely take a look at, like I said, and see. We budget each year, I think for our retiree insurance, about $20,000 in expense. And we normally are well below that. So, but like I said, we can definitely take a look at that and see as well.
Okay, I think we need to do that and take another look on what we actually, when we're hiring new employees, what we actually feel will be sustainable
Right.
and that we can do, and what that will look at in the budget in the future.
Okay, definitely. That's what I want to hear. Any ideas, any suggestions you have? That's great.
The other thing is, and this is amazing to me, I guess being from private industry side, but through listening to a lot of discussions in the county, some insurances are more than you could actually go out and bid it on private things. One of the things that really amazed me was on the Zoning Board of Appeals, when we started looking at the advertisements the county did in the newspapers, I'm not going to call any name in particular, but the newspapers, and we were trying to decide on the fee to come before the Zoning Board of Appeals so that the taxpayer didn't pay it, the person that was coming and asking for that paid for that total cost, was the newspaper advertising fees. Even though the county had huge amounts of advertisement, it cost the county more to advertise in this newspaper than it would have been for me to go out there and do one ad. I have a problem with that, and we discussed that quite a bit at that level. And the more ads that you do and the amount you do, I would think you would get more of a percentage off. So I guess I just would like to know if that's discussed and if you bargain with them on how you're doing that, because everyone knows I believe in the public being made aware and it being advertised. But I noticed that we advertise in every paper in Horry County, just about, and I'm not sure that's a necessity. And if we can't get some kind of different prices, then we might want to look at exactly what we need to do and do that if we can't barter a better price with some of these news organizations.
And I made, I'll start saying, I made a Esther, because I know we did make some changes recently. I know when we advertised for RFPs, we used to advertise with one particular paper, and I won't say, and it was ridiculous what we were paying, and so we've since changed that, and we've seen a drastic change in our expense for our advertising for the RFPs. But now I know advertisements for meetings and stuff is a little bit different.
And we've done, it's probably been a couple of years ago when we've made a drastic change in who we advertise with and why we advertise with them. It was mainly based on cost. The plus, I'm glad you said you see our ad in just about every paper in Horry County, because we probably caught that cost from advertising in one newspaper to advertising about 6, probably about 75%. We got a whole lot more bang for our buck in doing it that way. And we constantly look at those rates and constantly look to see. And in honesty, the most we're advertising right now are our meetings. We don't run any routine advertisement in any paper. Any advertisement or public education ad that we run right now is run based on specific programs that we might have going on right then. Specific, when we did Grinding of the Greens, That was all targeted towards grinding the greens. And, but you won't see what we used to do 6, 7 years ago, when we would advertise just to keep it, that recycling message forefront. You might see an ad that says, don't forget to recycle your cardboard, or newspaper recycling, saves this many trees. We've gotten away from that and now just focus primarily on just certain programs or certain events that we have going on.
The other thing while we're on that, if we have partners and they're listed in our newspaper ads and our TV ads, I hope that they're bearing some of the costs in actual money to pay for some of this, because the amount of advertising they're getting is tremendous.
Mhm.
And it may be that we would seek some new partners which would continue to do that,
Any-
which would cut our costs.
Any advertising partner we have, and I won't name them either, but any advertising partner, any business that we advertise with as a partnership, we split costs in half.
What was the end result of your zoning board of appeals work? Did that change?
It did. It changed through the negotiation with the papers. I think they did get some off of that. Also, which was put in there, the people that started coming before us had to start giving a reason of hardship, and they started discussing that before they actually would pay the fee and come before us. So it did to a degree. It didn't as much as I wanted it to, but it did to a degree.
Mr. Gray, I was looking in the budget, Mike showed me in the budget, by the end of FY15, we anticipate the balance in that equipment replacement account to be right at $3 million. So, I was off a couple million.
Thank you.
Okay, Esther, I was gonna let Esther kind of talk a little bit about her division and some of the, things that she's looking at for next year.
Thank you. We've looked over what we had planned for next year, and in essence, we're not planning introducing any new programs at all. We're more looking at something that we do on a regular basis, and that's fine-tuning and enhancing our operational efficiencies. We're looking at, and we always do this, we look at how we're operating, where we can do it better, where we might be able to bring in more recyclables through our recycling programs, things of that nature. We set a goal every year as to how many new customers we want to introduce into our recycling programs. Some years we make it, some years we come close. What we've seen in the last few years, it happens. Where we will gain businesses, but at the same time we will lose businesses. Sometimes to another hauler, sometimes because the business itself has decided that of their costs, they need to cut the recycling costs because their business isn't doing as well as they thought it would. Sometimes because a business closes. Sometimes because a customer has moved from one of our programs into a more enhanced program that we offer. During this current fiscal year, we've added about 15 new customers through the office paper, cardboard, or the commingle recycling programs. That being said, we've lost 19. And one of the 19 customers that we lost had 19 stops. So when you lose a customer that significant, we constantly go back and look and see what can we do to enhance and improve those programs. Sometimes if the customer has moved to get a better deal where it's a garbage recycling deal that they're getting, if we pick up your garbage, we'll throw in recycling for free. Those are hard to compete with. I can't offer you free garbage collection. We don't, for recycling, we don't pick up garbage. So those are tough to compete with. However, there are some others that we feel like we would be able to compete with, and we do believe that there's some opportunity out there. One of our challenges, however, has been since I've been here, we've had a philosophy of how we gained customers. Our ultimate goal has always been to have business or schools or industries recycling. So if you were recycling with us, that was wonderful, but if you were recycling with Bill's hauling services, that was wonderful too, because you were ultimately recycling. There was a time when we looked at the possibility of maybe going into businesses and offering them maybe an enhanced recycling program. One of the things that we offer that many others don't is our commingle recycling program. And we would love the ability maybe to go into some customers who are currently recycling, non-solid waste customers who are currently recycling and saying, we have another program that might be interesting, you might be interested in. But we've not in the past gone that route because there was concern over the Solid Waste Authority being in competition or competing with other haulers. Yes, sir.
Do we go and check, when we lose this business, do we go back and backtrack and go and ask them why we lost the business, or do we inquire?
We do inquire.
But I mean, we don't have anybody that goes back and say, why did you decide to go with Joe Blow rather than continuing with us?
We do inquire, and sometimes, and those are when we get those reasons that I introduced earlier. You know, another hauler offered me a better deal. My business isn't doing well, so I can't afford to do your program anymore. We had one business just this week. They're using an old container that is their business's container. And we'll service that container as long as the container is fit to service. But once the container is no longer fit to service, the sleeves now are getting to be worn, and it becomes a safety issue in servicing that container. We go to the business and we say, here are the options. We need you to repair your can or to come onto our program so that we can service you continually. And the customer decided that they didn't want to do either one. They had no cost in the program as long as that container was able to be serviced. But they opted to say they just soon put it in the garbage. So there are different reasons why people might come off of a program, and we do inquire. Now, if somebody said, well, this one came over and said, try me, you know, and they're still recycling, but we think we might have something better to offer. We have not done that. We have not gone back.
We don't go back and ask them, if you decide to go with Joe Blow, what's the deal? And we really don't have anybody to go out and research that, why we're losing customers.
I won't say we don't have somebody go out and research it. What I will say is we'll go out and we'll ask the question. But if hauler A is offering you garbage collection and free recycling, and you tell me he's offering me, he picks up my garbage and I get recycling for free, it's hard for me to compete with that.
We wouldn't go to that customer and say, well, he's offering you cardboard recycling for free, but we can, if you let us have it back, we can offer commingle. We wouldn't do that.
We have not done that.
We have not done it, but you say we wouldn't do it, or is that just been the
It's been
Then
the
the philosophy.
philosophy of the board not to, if the customer recycles, the philosophy has been if they recycle, that's what we want them to do, whether it's with us or someone else. So what we're saying now is we offer things in addition to what the normal hauler might offer, such as the commingle recycling program or the office paper program. We're the only one in the county who offers office paper. And if we had the ability, or if the philosophy of the board had changed to the point where if we went to a business that currently has a recycling program that's not offered through this, or not a Solid Waste Authority customer, if we went to a customer and said, hey, we have this that we can possibly offer you, we just want to have the comfort in knowing that as a board, we have that support to do so.
Well, I mean, we don't have anybody to go out and research that, why we lose customers. We really don't have anybody to go out and say, why did you decide to go with Joe Blow rather than continuing with us? But I think
But-
probably with the revenue that we're losing somewhere along the line, maybe we need to be a little more aggressive
And
in that. Is that,
we have no problem with being aggressive as long as that's the desire of the board for us to do.
There is, I don't see any way we can possibly continue under the philosophy that they can compete with us, but we can't compete with them. If that doesn't make it almost impossible to win, I don't know what else you
Yes,
could
sir.
do.
Yes, sir.
So, speaking just for this board member, if that doesn't, if our philosophy, I didn't know we had one.
Yes, you do.
But now I'm glad
You
to know that we got one, but, mine has never been that way, and I would restate that if we don't change that, we don't have a prayer in this game.
Before I, or any of us could make, the best informed decision, we would need to know, well, what quanta are we talking about? $2,000, $120,000, 2 million? It may be, going, overkill, because I could see an awful lot of bad publicity when a government monopoly directly competes with private tax-paying businesses just to campaign or hold a competitive advantage. I mean, there are a lot of people who are philosophically indisposed to using government that way. So we're talking about possibly changing the philosophy of this board to make it more like a private business. And before I could make an informed decision on that, I would want to know, well, if we make a change, how much money are we going to pick up? Or how much money are we chasing that we're now losing? Do you know?
Because we've never done this before, Mr. Gray, I don't feel comfortable saying we will gain this particular amount of money. I don't know. I don't know. All I can say is that there's an opportunity there where we can offer an enhanced recycling program to customers that we're not doing now.
I would think that before we make any kind of decision like that to change the philosophy of the board, we certainly would have, the staff would do a study and let us know what kind of money. We wouldn't just go out there and
That's all I'm saying.
yeah.
When was-
And without testing to see how many people would go from just pure cardboard to commingled, I don't know that we'd come up with that number. You know, we've not physically been out there and looked at a customer that we didn't have and say, well, you go to commingled recycling. You know, and without testing the market, I don't know how we could come up. You know, if we went out there and did 100 of our customers and 10% of them said, yeah, I'm willing to do it, or 100 customers of somebody else's, and you said, yep, 10% of them would, you could say, well, you know, we're looking at 5 or 10%, but with never doing that, that's gonna be a real hard number to come up with.
Are we talking about, these customers, they're now, the cardboard containers, I think we got, 800 of them out, something like
Somewhere in
that?
that neighborhood, yes, sir.
And we lose some. And we want to regain them. So we'll say, well, we'll pick up your wet garbage for, what are we saying?
We don't wanna be in the garbage picking up business.
Well, I'm misunderstanding.
What we're saying is that if you've got let's say you're with XYZ Hauling Company, Mr. Gray, and you got a cardboard container sitting beside your store that XYZ company is servicing. That us go to that, we could stop by that that business, your business, and say, Mr. Gray, we offer commingled recycling along with your cardboard. We can take commingled we can allow you to put plastic bottles in your cardboard, metal cans in your cardboard, this type material and this type material, and we would like to service you.
So you put different kinds of trash in there, just not MSW, right?
Different types of recyclables.
Recyclables.
Recyclable, besides cardboard.
Correct.
Yes, sir.
Just couldn't be wet garbage.
Then you can reduce your garbage bill, Mr. Gray, because we're gonna pick up more recyclables and you're gonna need less service. Got you a deal today.
Well, I mean, you know, of course, you're speaking in broad concepts, and as Mike pointed out, it doesn't mean a whole lot till you figure out, well, pencil in some numbers, how much money are we talking about? Because it could be casted in a way that would not, where it's just not worth it. If you're gonna pick up $700,000, you'd have to look at it, but if you're gonna pick up 7,000 or whatever, I'm just picking numbers, it may not be. But you said you would try to quantify it. Mike said it would be hard to do.
It would be definitely hard to do if you're not out there looking at it that way.
From my standpoint as a board member, ever since the Solid Waste Authority's been in existence, we were here for the public and the county to reduce, recycle, and reuse, and to handle that for the county. That's what they made us to do. We spent money to buy equipment to do this with. That's our job. Our job is to do the best that we can with the tax money and to handle the recycling centers for the county. And I think we were charged with that several decades ago, so I don't think for us to offer a service that we can keep the tipping fee low, not raise taxes, not raise money on the county's recycling centers, and to continue what we do is a competitive going out and looking for business. It's just what we were created for and what we've always done. For private industry to go in there and take they're the one that are being competitive and causing that to happen, not us. To me, that's not what we would be doing by continuing the service and being able to do that and operate efficiently at that point. So I don't have any problem with that. If we decided to put trucks on the road and collect MSW, that would be different. That's something we've never done. That would be a new competition to private industry. What we're doing now for our customers and what we offer, I don't think is trying to compete with private industry, nor to put them out of business, nor to cause them a problem. Therefore, I think we need to do the best job with the most materials that would continue to have our people working and to pay for the equipment that we have paid for. And I just don't see any problem with that.
Can I ask a question?
I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
I see a problem if we make a change in policy that's existed for 25 years without quantifying it.
Just so I understand, because I think there's two separate issues. Are you talking about a loss of an existing customer somewhere else and then asking the question, why are you leaving us and how can we earn your business back? Or are you talking about also going after new business out that may be going after this person who's got, because I think there's two separate issues.
I was referring to trying to keep our own business. Why have we lost this business? Why have you moved elsewhere? What?
And that's the
Yeah,
question that we
that's
do
what-
ask now.
That's what I was.
Yeah, because I think there's two separate issues. I think if that's the case, we would have every right to go in and say, okay, you've asked that we pick our cans up or whatever. How can we earn your business back? You're leaving us. I'd want to know that, and I think philosophically, I think there's nothing wrong with that. I think the greater concern would be is if, we said, okay, I know that guy's in business over there, and I think there's some fertile ground. Let's go over and try to cannibalize his business without any interest being shown by that customer. Let's just go over and say, how can we steal you from him? Then I think it's we've got a whole philosophy change at that point. But if it's business we've already had, and we're just trying to figure out how we can either keep that business or win that business back, then I think that's just prudent on our part.
And I agree that we need to probably do that, but the question is, you know, and that's what we're here for, to get guidance from the board today, or give you food for thought. I don't know that we're looking for a firm answer today, but food for thought is what direction the board wants us to take in. You know, we have the ability to offer commingled recycling, which gets more material out of the marketplace, where the haulers in the county don't offer that. We do. And the only way we can increase that is to go to their current customers, or we offer it to our new customers as well, the people that call us. Do we want to go after that commingled market? Not particularly focusing on going out after his cardboard customer, but if we can enhance their program. And then, of course, trying to maintain what we have. You're right, it's two separate issues, and the question is, what direction does the board want us to take in? And we're not asking for an answer today, we're looking food for thought.
Well, let's go back to the philosophy of the board. I've been here 11 years. And when I came here, it was kind of, if y'all bring it, we'll take it, and if you don't, it's okay. In the 11 years I've been here, this is the first time this has ever come before the board. So when I said I was glad that we found out we had a philosophy, that was not being facetious, that was being real, because obviously that, whatever board decided that was before I got here. Staff decided that, the board didn't decide that. There's never been a philosophy of this board. It was, you bring it, we'll take it. But as with everything else, things evolve and times change, and it's a competitive market now. You sit and we're here to do a budget. We do the budget, everybody does their work, does their due diligence, puts down a number, says this is the number you have to work with. 2 months later, Joe, whoever comes in with a new program, and he hits the street running hard, whether he's successful or not, and for the next 8 or 10 or 12 months, he's on the street taking your customers and you're doing nothing to keep them. How you gonna make that budget work? If we, the whole attitude about standing up, we work for the citizens, all of us understand that. But right is right. And protecting the citizens is why we're here. And to me, that's a part of it. But there's never been, to my knowledge, a philosophy decided by this board.
Well, the private haulers are becoming more aggressive every day. And what I'm saying is, we just need to know we're losing customers, and revenue is what we're talking about here today. We're losing revenue. We just need to know why we are losing what we're losing, and is there anything that we can do about it? I'm not for going out here and competing against the private haulers or the private industry, but I'm like Mr. Jones there now. We sort of, if you bring it to us, fine. If you don't, that's fine. And if you leave, that's okay. But we getting to a point now that we're losing revenue, and to operate this operation out here, we're going to have to either start going up on the tipping fees or getting some revenue from somewhere else. We just need to look into every avenue as to where we can retain the revenue that we got.
I want us to think about this, and I mean, this has been a talk in the industry for years. The more we recycle, the less goes to the landfill. And a good example is this year's budget. When the MRF revenue dropped, it affected the whole operation. When we went down $600,000 on the thing, it affected the whole operation. That's what's made the MRF it's making it more and more important to the operation of this facility because of that. If next month the revenues and sales of MRF products went up, our problem would go away that quick. So I guess I want to correlate the effects of recycling on the whole operation. Now, used to didn't. It was about the landfill, because you had enough money and you was making enough money off the landfill, even if they went to nothing, no problem. but they're beginning to balance out, and over the years to come, it's only gonna get more like that. So, you know, we need to think about that when we're thinking about it, because that's what's happening here today. We lost $600,000 in revenue in recycling. That's why we're here today talking about these low numbers. It ain't because we taking less MSW. It's because we've got less revenue off the recyclables, and we don't have enough money to operate the whole facility off of it anymore. Not the MRF, the whole facility.
And as Ms. Jan said, when we lost that $600,000, we cut all the fat. And we're getting by, and that was doable, and staff did an outstanding job, but there ain't no fat left. You lose $300,000 now is gonna hurt you a great deal more than that first $600,000 did, because there's nothing left to trim. I think that makes it even more critical.
I hope I made sense.
Yeah, and I would equate it to my private business. I'm gonna try to make as many people aware of the services I offer as possible. And if somebody wants to leave my business, I wanna know why, and I wanna know how I can retain them or get their business back. But I'm not gonna go to my competitors and say, hey, let me entice you to come over to me. I'm not gonna go and compete that way, because I don't think that's fair. I'm gonna make everybody aware of what the services are. If they choose to come to me because I got a better deal, I hope that's the case. But if somebody's happy with my competitor, you know, I'm not gonna go over and say, let me tell you how I can help you out, just come to me. And I just don't want us to get into that kind of cutthroat type situation.
I don't either, but what you have done also is made your competitor aware that if he comes after your customer, you're gonna try to find out what you can do better to maintain that customer, and that's all we've said.
And I think that's every right that we have as a group to keep the business or get it back if they've already been a customer of ours. That's why I was wanting to clarify between the two separate issues.
Yeah, I agree with Lance. We spent taxpayer money and county money buying equipment to do certain things. We've been doing it for decades. We need to continue to do that. We need to continue to do it efficiently, because as a taxpayer, that's what I'd want you to do. And I wouldn't want you to be raising my taxes instead of becoming more efficient and keeping your business.
Mike, if I understood what you were saying, that we're here largely today because the revenue from the MRF is down $600,000.
That's correct.
Is it a false narrative to say that we're here because somebody's stealing $600,000 worth of our business, and that we need to aggressively go out and put up a new plan to recoup that, or?
No, I wouldn't say that.
Well,
Like I said, it's due to the price of the recyclable markets. And if that's a continuing thing for a long period of time, we gotta find a way to make up the revenue, and that's what we're trying to discuss. Not going out taking somebody else's business, but how do we do that? How do we change?
You and I are swimming in the same stream. We don't need to be talking about how we're gonna go out and get new customers by doing this, that, and the other, or get our old customers. I'm sure there's some value there. I don't think it's a large amount. The problem is, as you stated, the loss of the Sunoco contract and the volume associated with that. You say that didn't hurt us any.
It took down some of the revenue, but our cost went down associated with it, and we reduced our cost. So our per ton cost is the same.
You know, it really didn't matter whether we had Sunoco or not.
Well, I ain't saying it didn't bring more volume in, and we didn't make more money off of it. I'm just saying we lowered our cost to cover, but at the same time, recyclable sales. When Sunoco came in here, the first thing they said is we have to stop the bleeding. It's costing us to bring material to y'all. So we had to, when we did it, the first thing we did immediately when that left is cut our cost.
Well, let's
And
just leave Sunoco out of it. I mean, one hand they say, well, we were making money, the other hand they say, no, we're losing money. But clearly, the drop in the commodities market has affected us and everybody that deals with recyclables. And is that what your position is the major difference between today and 2 years ago or whatever? Is that?
We lost C&D. Now, everybody says they wasn't gonna drive right by us and take that stuff down 378. We've lost C&D. commodities are down, insurance is up, and all these other things that we've talked about. And that's got us $780,000 in the hole. And all we're talking about is, and I think we've got the philosophy straightened out here on our salespeople today. If we've got a new program, we advertise it and make everybody know it. But for somebody to follow one of our trucks to a dumpster and say, well, we can walk right in here and we can get that customer today. And all they gonna do is say, well, that's just the way it is. We're going to now go to that customer, see if it was something on our part, if it was poor service, non-collection, whatever it was, to improve on our program. And that's what we're saying about the philosophy or the way we looked at stuff here. But no, it's more than one issue. The reason we're sitting here with this brackets around $783,000.
Well, I agree, but I think we were leaving out the notion that and Mike is the one who brought it up. If the recyclables market today was where it was 2 years ago, we wouldn't have near this hurdle that we have now. And that means it goes up, it goes down. It's like pork bellies on the Chicago Mercantile Exchange. You don't have any control of it. You can fiddle with this or fiddle with that, but it ain't gonna make a whole lot of difference. And if we want to aggressively put in a program to compete with the private sector, then so be it.
Well, I don't think none of us want to do that, Mr. Gray, but the thing is, our cushion's been taken away from us. The money that we had that gave us a little cushion before in case things happen is no longer there.
Well, I like what Danny's approach. He said, if we lose a customer for whatever reason, we're gonna go back and try to get him.
And I think that's what we've been talking about, is retain the business that we got. We're not actively going out for the private sector's business.
Okay.
We've adjusted our philosophy, thanks.
We won't belabor that, point anymore. I won't belabor the point, but I do want to make sure everybody's just clear on one little point. When we lose customers whether it's office paper, whether it's cardboard, or even if it's a commingled customer, we do go back and ask why. We do that now. Right now is what we do. You know, the only area in that scenario was that if it was something that we may have been able to go back and say, hey, we think we can do it better, let's talk about, we didn't do that part. But we did go back, because if it was a problem with us, we need to fix it. So I don't want you all to leave here thinking that the customer said, we're going with Joe Blow, and we said, okay. That we did go back, we do go back and ask why. And when and if they tell us why is when we can do what we need to do on our side.
What does a commingled customer look like?
What do they look like? What businesses might the commingled customer be in? Is that what you're asking?
Well, it's not just cardboard.
Commingled.
It's not wet garbage. How do we have a
If you go
commingled?
to a recycling center and you put your plastic, your metal cans, your aluminum cans, all in one container, that's a commingled container. With a business, they're also able to put in their cardboard. So as opposed to just collecting one recyclable, the cardboard, we're able to collect 3 or 4. So that's the difference.
Who do we have that's like that? I mean, I'm trying to figure out, I'm
We
missing
have,
something.
for instance, we have several hotels who are on a commingled recycling program where
Several, what?
hotels or motels,
Oh, okay.
where they might have a restaurant where they're generating cardboard.
Mm-hmm.
They're also generating plastic, metals,
Mm-hmm.
aluminum. If you are recycling in our 40-yard roll-off recycling container, you can also put your glass in that container. So for larger businesses such as your hotels or restaurants,
Great
things of
deal
that
for a
nature.
golf course.
Exactly. It is a great deal for a golf course.
Let's leave the personalities out. I just want to understand,
Yeah.
we talk about commingle, it's not wet garbage.
No, sir.
It's not just cardboard. And who we have are some hotels who currently or might be interested in, we want to put all of these various recyclables into one bin that'll come over here.
Yes.
And you,
that
you
right?
picked that up, whereas
picked that up.
opposed to I bring my own over here. I
That's
put it in
exactly
my
right.
truck, I commingle it on my property and
exactly
put it
right.
on my truck and bring it over here.
Yes, sir.
And then residential, I mean, it's the same way at my house.
That's
You know, in the
exactly right.
green,
Yeah.
yeah, that, they,
Yeah.
my
I mean,
POA
and-
pays and it's picked
Yeah.
up and I don't have to separate it.
Exactly.
See, I even talked with the private industry, Mr. Gray, a while back about us providing roll-off boxes to them, the possibility of us providing roll-off boxes to them, and in HOAs, to put these commingled roll-off boxes in them and let the HOAs use them, and then we'd pull them. But I hadn't got any response back from them. They're not interested.
And we have a couple of standalone homeowners associations that utilize a commingled recycling box for a variety of
Yeah.
recyclables.
It'd be up to the homeowners association to understand, don't put your garbage bags in there, just put all this other stuff.
Yes, sir.
Okay, I'm starting to get a picture. It could be homeowner associations, it
Yeah,
could be
it-
hotels, it could be a
We-
manufacturing
Yeah,
plant.
it's basically the same program that we offer at the schools. In that cafeteria recycling
Okay.
program, they put cardboard, they put their plastic jugs, they put their metal cans, all in one container. Only difference is, as opposed to it being a school, it might be an HOA, it might be a
I
hotel,
get that.
might be a
We
golf
can
course.
bring it over here to our MRF,
Yes, sir.
separate it out,
Mhm.
and not have to worry about
One
contamination
container.
for wet garbage.
Yes,
And it's
sir.
not just the green cans with the slot, it's a commingle deal.
Mhm.
And we could be more competitive by
Offer
doing,
more service, more topics.
by saying, well, if you'll, give me back your cardboard business, I'll set a box there and you can put all your recyclables in there,
They could just put it right in their cardboard box.
put it in the cardboard box. Okay, I get it. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I'm kinda hard-headed, but I
That's all
basically
right.
do.
It's okay. If you have any questions, you just ask. Not a problem. I mentioned when I started that we were looking at, and we always look at where we could improve what we're doing, where we might be able to gain more recyclables. One area in particular over at the MRF, we're always looking at that MRF line and that processing facility and looking to see where we might be able to tweak or where we might be able to improve something to capture whether it's some recyclables that are being lost through the reject stream, or whether it's recyclables coming in, if there's a particular way we need the municipality or the agency that's bringing them to better handle their recyclables. We're always looking at this. Jan, I think, and Mike both mentioned, at the end of the Sunoco contract, we immediately reduced our labor over at the MRF because we had increased it when the tonnage was up. With the tonnage going down, it was an immediate reduction in staff over there. And looking at things over the past couple of months, we ran a pilot program because we were noticing in our rejects that we were losing a good bit of aluminum cans and plastic bottles. And mainly because of the process and them getting to us, these containers lost their three-dimensional quality and became flat, like that. And our system makes it difficult for that flat piece of plastic or aluminum or metal to be taken out through the process. So if it's flat, like a piece of paper, it's probably going to wind up in your reject container.
And the
So-
reject container comes to the landfill.
Exactly. We pay at the MRF for that to come here and be disposed of at the landfill, just like any other customer. So our goal is always to reduce our rejects. So we're always looking at, when we initially moved into the MRF, not long after, we started recycling our reject container. When it got full, we put it back on the floor and sent it back through the system. That was a little bit more labor intensive than we needed to be. So in the last month or so, we ran a pilot, in-house pilot, and we had someone at the reject line, the very last point before it got into that compactor, to see how much material we can actually pull off the line. In doing so, we learned a good lesson and hopefully have found a way to maybe gain some revenue from what was being lost into that reject container. We pulled out, on average, a little bit more than 200 pounds of both PET and aluminum cans in an 8-hour shift, consistently. So when you see, when we get next month, when we're doing our overall operating budget, you will hear me mention that there was a decrease in staff in one location. However, we will be recommending not an SWA employee, but our contract laborers, the ones that we use to do most of our processing. We'll have a net loss of probably 2 overall contract workers, but we are installing one to do nothing but pull this material out of that reject line. And we're looking at a net gain of about $36,000 from the revenue we gain in a year.
And that's at today's prices.
That's at today's current prices. If they were at 6 months ago prices, it'd be a whole bunch more than that.
And
But-
saving space in the landfill.
And saving space in the landfill.
And reducing costs for the tipping fee, that's coming, that they're having to pay from the MRF.
Yeah. So those are some of the things that we're looking at in the upcoming fiscal year on how to maybe increase our recyclables and hopefully some revenue also.
Have you looked at, I think we talked about once, have you looked at any machinery that we could buy that would process some of the things we put in the landfill now? I mean, I know there's some plastics we can't, and there are certain machines that would actually allow us to do that. And I would like to see a cost analysis before it was bought, but I think there are some things that are not ridiculously expensive that we could possibly add to keep things out of the landfill as well as process those instead of putting them in there.
With us getting most of the plastic and the metal out of it now with that third process, there's gonna be very little less. About the only thing you could do with it at that point in time is in some type of gasification system or composting or
Well, and-
organic composting,
well,
but you have to have the machinery to buy it, and it's real expensive.
And we looked at, something like the thermoform plastic, which is a different type of plastic.
Yeah, that one.
And we kind of looked at that a couple of years ago, and that probably a little bit cost prohibitive. The only other commodity that I can think of that might be going to the landfill now that could possibly be recycled would be something along the styrofoam family or something like that. And that too, the last time we looked at it, was just way too costly to bring here because there's not an end user right.
Give you an idea on styrofoam, we looked at it, I think, Mr. Jones, when we were in Tampa that time.
Yep.
Yeah, I know one time, but you have to melt it. You have to have to have a machine to melt styrofoam with, and they will not take a load that's less than 40,000 pounds in a truck. And the amount that it would take to make 40,000 pounds would be about a warehouse full.
Yeah. One question I would, like to ask is on one of my favorite topics, which is glass.
Yes, sir.
As always, we talk about we're in the selling business or going after somebody's customers. I don't know who is selling the glass to Charleston or Norfolk or any of the shipbuilding people now, but I've asked the question, this will be the third time, we can add to our machine and bring the glass down to a finer grade that could be used for blasting. Has anybody done anything on that yet?
I'm working on that.
I got patience.
Sandblast.
Blasting, sandblast, it's glass blasting, bead blasting is actually what it's called.
Any other questions?
Mr. Gray, one thing I wanted to say, I know you brought up a while ago, and I want to get this, since we're getting past the revenue thing, the equipment replacement fund, you talk about maybe going to that one, but that, I think, Jan, we looked at, it's about $2.9 million in that account. maybe using some of that money to balance things out because there's $2.9 million in there. My biggest fear, my honest biggest fear is that we would start stripping that account little by little and using the money out of it. And then we'd come up to have to buy a compactor that cost $1 million, and with a $13 million, instead of being $700,000 short, we'd be $1 million short in 1 year. Because that's how we buy our equipment. We pay for it over time, and we buy it. So I'm just my fears. I'm not asking for a response, but I just want, that's my fear that we wouldn't have
You
enough.
gonna get one. You open the door.
You know, we just wouldn't have the money to buy the equipment with when we got time to buy it. That's the main thing.
Well, if you finance it, you got, they're gonna charge you interest, so you,
Well, you're gonna go farther in the hole because you're gonna be
right,
paying interest.
going further
and
in the
you're gonna-
hole there.
I don't make that as a recommendation. I agree with you. It's poor, it's not best management practices to, an older term for set aside like that is a sinking fund. You just put money in there and it sinks as you acquire the equipment you know you're gonna have to replace. And there is an advantage to having the reputation of, when I go in the market, I pay cash on the barrelhead. And I'm a good credit risk and all that. I'm just saying that, the money that we show as an expense is not an out-of-pocket outlay. This may come as a big surprise, but in the private sector businesses that I've been in, sometimes we just have to use depreciation expense in ways that we wish that we didn't have to. Anyway, it's not the same thing as depreciation set aside is not the same thing as an out-of-pocket cash to pay the government for FICA increases or something like that. But I don't recommend it by any means. I was just giving a blinding glimpse of the obvious. I knew you already knew that. Sorry.
All right, well, good afternoon. Operationally, next year, we've got 3 exciting things we're looking at. Excuse me, first of all, y'all heard about the piggyback. That's still on schedule to be built in March and get reviewed. We'll report back to the board and hopefully get started July 1st. So everything's going well with that and it's ready to go. The rest of the good things we have going next year, not all of it, but it all deals with wood. First thing I want to talk about, food waste composting. A lot of interest in food waste composting. I'm going to throw some numbers out to you and kind of tell you what our plan is for next year. Looked at it real hard. We've made a lot of phone calls, talked to a lot of folks about different things that go on with food waste. Once we get full momentum going, probably year 2, maybe a little later, our annual cost is going to be around $140,000. And that would include about $63,000 for personnel, getting another wheel loader back there. The bugs, I think y'all, anybody that went to Charleston, I think knew about the bugs. They were like $25,000 a year. We have a lot of interest in joining the U.S. Compost Council to get people to know that our compost is really upgraded. And, you know, we can sell it to DOT or somebody else out there. A lot of lab testing has to be done quarterly. So that's kind of year 2. What we're looking at next year is try to maintain our cost with the personnel we have here. We know it's going to be slow getting off the ground. You know, it's going to be new. We're going to throw it out this afternoon at our haulers meeting. You know, we want to try to find some interested parties, see if they have any ideas about it, if they want to haul it and bring it to us. But we'll try to maintain with some other things that we've got going on with the wood and the chipper I'll get to in just a little bit. That's going to relieve a little bit of time in the back. Excuse me, Rodney. That'll relieve a little bit of time back there. So those 2 guys that we have currently doing all our grinding, we're hopeful they'll be able to handle the food waste mixing part of it. We're real close on getting our permit. There was 2 little issues. One was the blowing plastic when we grind back there. So we've addressed that. And the other, currently, we test each row. We record moisture and temperature 3 places on a row. The new permit, they want you to do it every 50 feet. And the length of our windrows, recording all that, it would take almost an hour to do 1 windrow every 50 feet. And so you're talking about with 7 windrows, 600 to 700 feet long, you're talking almost a day just to record temperatures and moisture. So we've, part of our thing back with DHEC, and they're very, very receptive to it, what we do now. So I think they're going to go along with that. So we should, if everything goes as according to plan, we'll have our permit by the end of the month for, we call it Category 2 or Type 2 composting out there. But we're checking now, again, the bug thing, that's $25,000 a year annually based on what Charleston is doing. We've got calls into DTEC and Charleston to see, is the bugs needed? If we don't have to, use the bugs, we can get by without it. It does speed up the process. It's kind of like an agitator. They get in there and,
Enzymes.
yeah, they get in there and just start making that stuff heat up quicker. Yeah, you put them, the length of our rows, you put one at each end and then a group in the middle. And they all just kind of work together, and they break the food down and the wood waste all at the same time, and they speed up the composting process. So, right now, it takes us about anywhere from 60 to 90 days for a row. Once we just put the ground-up yard waste out there, it takes 60 to 90 days for it to turn into good compost. And we have good compost now. We've had people come in from out of town and just, they look at it, yeah, that's good. Clemson University, at the current time, they push us a lot at the Master Gardener course. I know Mr. Knight and I, we heard a lot about that when we took that course a few years ago. And they push it. It's really good stuff. But the food waste will enhance it. So we're going to be looking for things there. But again, we're checking to see, do we need the bugs, or do we not? So we could save that money. We want to join the Compost Council. That's $550 a year. Plus it's another, just about another $3,500 to do the testing that they want to do. They want you to test each row that you have food waste in. And when you send it off, you have to put it in a cooler. It's got to be packed with ice, and it's got to be shipped overnight. So you can imagine, we're looking $3,000 to $4,000 a year just in shipping costs, just to get this stuff sampled and tested and approved each time we send it on out. So we're excited about it. Again, we're going to talk to the haulers today, see if we can get them in here, but there is a cost associated with it. We'll see where it goes. We're going to push it hard, but I want the board to know there is a cost with doing it. Year 2 is probably going to be when we see the better results of it. Any program you start right off the get-go, it's going to be a little slow going.
First year, we have no cost whatsoever. We're gonna use the personnel and the equipment we got on site, right?
Yes, sir. The only cost that we will have will be any kind of monitoring and testing that we have to send that off.
And that was 500, compost council was.
Right. We're probably looking at a total with the U.S. composting and doing the other quarterly lab testing, somewhere around $6,000 to $7,000 just for testing and shipping, getting it out there.
Have you talked to any of the people at Coastal Carolina in the environmental areas? I know they do water testing and they have equipment there that they teach people. Is there any way they could do that for testing for us?
We haven't talked to them. I don't know if they could do it or not. I know,
It is,
go ahead.
Stephanie and I looked into that, Bill. The U.S. Compost Council requires that you go to certain labs. They got a list of certain labs, and so does DHEC for testing.
What's the advantage in belonging to that organization?
Well, you get the credibility of having a good, consistent quality of compost
Credibility to who?
to the people that's using it.
My point is, I don't know anybody that's ever come out here to pick up compost and wonder whether your credibility was good or not. They smell it and run it through their fingers, but
You talking no farmers, golf courses and such as that though?
To make sure it's got a
Bassett, aren't you?
consistency in
Huh?
use. Make sure you got a consistency of product in use, that you don't get your nitrogen too high and it's your metals too high and it's, different kinds of stuff. And it's just basically saying, hey, look, I've been tested and I spent this money.
Yeah. I can see a benefit to belonging to them, particularly at first. But for them to require that amount of testing or not allow it to be done by someone like Clemson or Coastal or someone in this area, I have a bit of a problem with that after a while.
I don't know that Coastal meets the criteria for some of the testing, and they may, but we'll check into it.
Well, I know, one thing we heard, and I think the name itself carries a lot of weight, U.S. Compost Council. 'Cause I know when we talked to the folks down in Charleston down there, you know, there was that kind of that thing, well, you can get compost over here at, big box store or the landfill, and there's something about that, you know, quote, landfill that's associated with trash, and it may not be up to par as one of the big box stores.
Which is getting their compost from the landfill. That's what I thought.
So, what we thought, once we, you know, we got the program, or before we actually kicked into it, I mean, today we're having, this afternoon, a haulers meeting, but, you know, we've talked about just maybe trying to have a meeting of nothing but landscapers come in here, you know, folks that do that kind of work, that sell it. Let us have, some test results here, let them know what our plan is, what we're gonna do, and say, hey, this stuff is really gonna be good, and push it just with those folks, you know, instead of somebody that's hauling a dumpster out there, just it's gonna put compost and work in your yards, or go, you know, to a golf course or something like that. So we're gonna shoot for that once we get it going, but, year one, you know, we'll keep you up, keep you posted on how it's going. And of course, I always invite you to come out and come, you know, and see what we're doing. Food waste comes in, we do have to mix it every day. Right out there, you know, where we'll be doing our grinding, so you have to mix it, get it in your rows every day. That's part of the permit out there. So, we're hopeful with some of the time that we're gonna save with other things, and we'll make arrangements. We always seem to, quote, find a way to get it done, and we'll continue to do that.
How about as far as, people that will haul the food waste to us? Where are we with that?
Well, that's where Bill said we were gonna talk to him more this afternoon. I know one guy came in early on out of Charleston and wanted to start a route, and I know he was looking for a location to do it. As soon as we can get the permit in hand, people's not really gonna do anything until you have the permit in hand, and they know that they've got a place to carry it. And once we get that done, we think we may generate some more interest. But we wanna know let all the haulers know this afternoon that it's coming. Won't be long. And, if you wanna get into it, we want you to.
That's gonna be one of the key factors though, is, correct?
Well, if you ain't got food waste, you can't do
You
anything.
can't do it.
The next thing that we have that we're excited about is, and I know Ms. Creech talked about it at a couple board meetings, is putting a, electric wood chipper over at the C&D processor. And we've done a lot of research on that. We've got some ballpark numbers there. Currently, we estimate we spend about, 23% of our time grinding the clean wood that comes off the processor and goes to the back. And roughly about $113,000, that's what our cost is to haul it to the back. That's our fuel and operating cost for the roll-off truck, the grinder, the wheel loader, and a dozer and all back there. And then we also have to pick it up when we have someone come in and we sell it for wood chips for the boiler fuel, the Traco time and labor to load that up. That's roughly about $113,000 a year. We put this wood chipper in here, feel very comfortable we can save almost 50% of that by not hauling it back there, not grinding it back there. We do have some offset costs. We'll have the maintenance that we save on the grinder, the Peterson in the back. We'll have to spend a little bit on a wood chipper replacing teeth and that kind of thing. The fuel that we'll save in the back with the different equipment will be offset a little bit because our electric will go up, because this will be a 460 type electricity out there, so that'll be high. Those things offset. But what we will save on is hauling all that back there. We'll put it directly into a walk-in floor trailer. We'll move that out. We won't be loading it back in, a customer coming in and hauling it off for boiler fuel. So I estimate we can save just about 50% of our cost. And again, we think it takes about 12 weeks a year to grind the clean wood. That's about 23% of our time to grind that clean wood that's pulled right off that line. It'll never go back there. It'll be ground up, put into a walk-in floor trailer, and be hauled off straight from there. The 23% that we think we're gonna save in the labor this first year, that's what we're gonna use to do our food waste back there without adding any personnel. So, we're looking at that. And another little item to go with it, or two more items we're gonna go with it, with our woodwork back there. One with the grinding, we're looking to go to 2-inch screens. We know that two of our larger customers here on the mulch, they want like a 2-inch nominal mulch. We've got that in the budget to get those screens in there, so hopefully we can enhance that market, get more people, especially bigger customers that are interested coming in and buy more mulch from us. And B of that, we're also looking at a thing, I don't know if any of y'all heard about it, it's called a color critter, where you buy this powder, you can buy it either in red, black, or brown, and we have it specially made, it'll sit on top of our grinder, and when you put the ground up wood waste back through there, you're kind of double grinding, and it'll be the land clearing debris. But this kind of pounds it in, it doesn't paint it or anything, it pounds it in to the mulch. So this picture doesn't show a whole lot, but again, you can see where the ground up mulch is going in, if you can see it, and then when it comes out from the color critter, it's red right there. So we're looking at, we're gonna try to go see one. I think the closest one is in Georgia somewhere. There's about 90 of them, what I found out, in the United States, but the closest one is in Georgia. So we wanna go take a look at that and see if that's feasible, to see if we can sell more mulch out there. Whether our price has to stay the same or not with our costs that, that we put into it. But we're looking at that also. So we've got a lot of exciting things going on with the wood next year, with the grinding, and we're ready to get started with it.
I appreciate you following through on that and checking all that, because to me, that is a great efficiency. Buying a few pieces of equipment, like we have been to places and seen and talked to people, and for you to follow through on that to that extent, thank you very much. Great job.
Well, we've already had a design put together for the chipper out there. And should, for some reason, because equipment will break down, should it go down, it will not stop our processor out there. We'll have it kick off in another direction, do just what we're doing right now, put it in a container till we can get it back up and going.
Danny, give the boy a bonus.
He don't hurry up, he's not gonna get it.
That coloration process, how much does that machine cost?
Roughly $20,000.
I'm with Pam, I think you'll sell a heap more of it if it's got a nice color to it, because what we have is the same material, I understand that, but it looks like, to me, it don't look too good. But if you put some color to it and dry it out some, all of a sudden your dogs want to lay in it,
Well, I think number one, once we start grinding with the 2-inch screens back there, I think you're gonna see it. I mean, we have some really good mulch back there now, in all honesty. But when we go to the 2, we've been grinding with the 3. Once we grind with the 2, it's gonna look pretty. I think you'd come get it, put it in your yard, even though it wouldn't have no color. But yeah, we're looking at the color critter, and it'd have to be specially made for our grinder. And the one picture on here is made for a Peterson grinder. So
Well,
talk to the
you done
manufacturer.
learned me 2 terms today, bugs, and that's
Color critter.
literally and color critters, man, I'm all for
Learn something new every
Get a
day.
man of bones.
Bill's done a lot of research on that. He's done a good job on that.
Yeah. Bill, I think y'all have done an excellent job. All of staff has done a good job, but I am, again, a little confused here. I think what you're doing is great, and I personally believe it's the right direction to go in, with meeting with the haulers and meeting with the people that do landscaping and trying to sell them on the compost and qualifying our compost and making it good. What I'm trying to do is figure out the difference between competing with private enterprise and selling that compost and protecting our recyclables and what we do there. I can't find any difference there. I think that's where we're at here. We have to look after the citizens, and to do that, we've got to get competitive in this industry in all parts of it, and I think that's what y'all have done, and I think you're going in the right direction. I just don't see any difference between recyclables and compost as far as competition.
One thing to me, what we're doing with the food waste is kind of like our shingle program out there. You know, if you bring your shingles in, you get a little bit of a rate discount there. But we're we're not out there competing against anybody, but we offer a better rate. You bring your shingles in, and we still recycle them. The food waste would pretty much be coming in here just like, you know, any other MSW. We're separating it out, recycle it, and we're just enhancing, you know, our compost, making it better. But I mean, we're not going out trying to compete against anybody. We're just adding a program.
You're talking to Noah about the storm, but if I'm selling something and you selling something, we're competing. Now, you can call it however you want to. You can put all the mayonnaise in it you want to put in it. But if we both selling, we're competing. And I'm saying I think that is right. I'm thinking you should be doing the best service you can for the citizens, and that part of that service is making the best compost you can and selling it. That's all. I'm on your team.
Though I know you are, to me, that's the way I looked at it. It's basically the same concept. It's just different materials there. And, you know, you always want to do the best you can, make the best product you can.
Through doing that, we've opened up a private industry to create jobs.
There you go.
We're helping them.
That's true. Because we will need, you know, somebody to go pick it up and bring it to us. That's what, you know, Charleston County did. Anything else on operations for this year? Y'all really need to come out once we get these things kicked off. You need to come out and spend some time with us and see all the new things that we're going to be doing with that next year. Especially, too, the piggyback. You know, with all the conversations we had on that, that's a huge thing. That's going to carry us for 10 years out there. You know, that's huge.
Are we about to wind up?
We're getting there, yes, sir. The only thing I really have as far as the finance department and what we've got going on or what we're kind of looking at for next year, I don't have any big exciting projects like Bill. The only thing we're kind of finance is what it is. The only thing we are kind of taking a look at is currently with our payroll, we are still using the old time clocks here at the MRF and at the landfill shop where you punch with a card, with an old time card. And at the recycling centers, they're filling out a piece of paper and faxing it over with their time each week. We are looking into maybe a more automated time and attendance program, something where they would have a time clock at these centers and they would have a punch code they'd key in when they clock in and clock out. You know, we're spending a day and a half, I say we, Susie, spends a day and a half, time and time cards, time and time sheets, manually keying it in. And with the way our software works, if for some reason we had to do a void of a payroll run, or for some reason, it wipes it all out and you have to start all over again. So we're trying to look at something that's maybe a little more automated, save her some time with that, something that would also catch those corrections, something the managers could look at on a weekly basis to see how much time they've worked. Especially right now, you know, we're monitoring, you know, part-time employees very closely with the Obamacare. You know, they can't work more than, you know, average more than 30 hours. We make it 28 hours, you know, a week. And so it'd be easier for them to be able to monitor that, for Nanette to be able to watch it as well. So we're currently looking into a system. Like I said, I'm getting some prices, and it's something that I'm kind of looking into Of course, it would not affect Fund 6, the Solid Waste Authority, as much as it would, I'm sorry, Fund 4, as much as it would Fund 6, because that's where most of the time clocks are gonna go, it would be to that area. But it would, like I said, I think overall it would be beneficial, and like I said, that's the one thing we are looking into, hopefully maybe implementing something like that next year, as well.
Does Mr. Gosnell know you're planning to do that?
Oh, no, not yet.
No, don't.
So, and like I said earlier, as you can see, we've gone through and we have taken a look at every department and every division that we can, and we've looked at anything that we can do different, any changes that we can make. Like I said, we are really hoping that all of these changes will, bring in more revenue, make us more efficient. Definitely that's what we're looking for, and that's our goal. Like I said before, we sat down as a group and kind of came up with some ideas, some recommendations on what we could do, what changes we could make to offset that $783,000 deficit that we're looking at. Staff's recommendations. Our first recommendation that we would have would be a tipping fee increase for yard waste. We're currently charging $14 a ton for yard waste. And looking at cost of services, it costs us about $17 a ton to process it. So even with the $2 increase, we still, to break even, we would need a $3 tipping fee increase, but we're recommending a $2 tipping fee increase. That would be a $64,000 increase in revenue. The second recommendation that we have is our MSW incentive. We would recommend reducing that incentive by 30%. We have, like I said, several customers that are on it. We don't feel it's beneficial necessarily to do away with the incentive. We would just like to see a reduction in the incentive. That would be an increase in revenue of about $70,000. The other things we've kind of taken a look at that we know as far as expenses that we can reduce is we have a fuel contingency, and last year it was $145,000. We're recommending reducing that to $45,000, so we'd reduce it by $100,000. With the fuel prices being down, we know that they possibly will go up, but at least if we have the $45,000 in there, we feel like that we could cover that. Bill does a great job every year of going through and doing an analysis on fuel costs, and so, like I said, we feel comfortable that we could reduce that fuel contingency. Another expense that we realized that it's in our budget that we feel like we can reduce, we had in there money for the Sunoco and Republic contracts that we had, the material that was coming into the MRF. We had $160,000 in there. Is that right? We have $160,000 in there. We'd like to keep $20,000 in there just so that we could, in case we came up on another deal or another program, somebody came along, we wanted to have a little bit to leave in there. So we're looking at a savings of $140,000.
What did you call that?
It's an operating cost that we had. It was a Sunoco Republic. It was a transportation cost that we had. We had a contract with Sunoco and Republic for them to bring their recyclables to us.
Oh,
So it was just a transportation cost.
well, that's over with, so you want to keep some in and you pick up
Exactly. We'd like to
140.
keep about $20,000 in there. So
Okay.
our final recommendation to balance the budget would have the remaining balance coming from a transfer from designated account. And my recommendation would be the construction and development account. And it's our general construction and development account. I don't want you to get it confused with our landfill construction account. That construction and development account is there for infrastructure, if we needed to build a new building, something along those lines. We don't have anything major coming up that we would utilize that money for. At the end of the year, back in June, our balance was $1.2 million in there. We're estimating that possibly, the transfer would need to be somewhere between $400,000 and $500,000 to balance the budget. Understand that we would only transfer from that fund if it was necessary. We would look at it month by month. It would be something I would come to the board and notify you and let you know that, that we are short. We would need to do a transfer from that. It would not be an automatic transfer. So
What was the amount in that kind?
I'm giving you an estimate of.
Ballpark, yeah, just
Ballpark, 4 to 500,000.
All right,
You know,
and
until we,
in the account itself?
from that transfer, from that construction development account, yes, sir.
No, the
And there's
1.2
1.2 million in there currently,
1.2,
yes,
that's
sir.
what I was asking.
Right. Forgot what I was gonna say. But, like, I said, that's our, like I said, that's kind of our way to balance. Once we get the operating budgets in, I'll have, I'll have a better estimate of where that figure is going to come into play. You know, like I said, as the managers are going through and they're adjusting their operating budget, then I'll know what amount we'll need to put in that line item, as our transfer amount for the year. With that being said, you wanna go? With that being said, I guess my biggest concern is, I guess I look at that as our, kind of as our Band-Aid for the year. It's something we've done that in the past. Back in 2010, we had the same situation. And like I said, my concern is that what do we do next year? If market prices don't come back, because if they were, like Mike said earlier, if they were to come back tomorrow, we wouldn't need this at all. We wouldn't even be talking about this. We'd be fine. But we don't anticipate that right now. We don't know what's going to happen. And usually when they drop, they don't come back nearly as fast as they drop. And my concern is for the following year. We have two things. I talked to Vance Moore this week. I always try to get with him on what we're putting aside for closure and post-closure and construction. His recommendation to me is that next year we need to increase that. When they originally set up this plan for what we're putting aside, they anticipated a 2% inflation increase each year, and that we would cover that 2% with the interest that we put into those accounts. Well, we're not getting 2% on our investments, so we can't give 2% for inflation into those accounts. So his recommendation next year will be for us to increase what we're putting aside for closure and post-closure and construction. If we have that increase, on top of the fact that our market prices remain down or go lower, we'll be in the same situation, if not worse, come next year. And, and my concern is, like I said, our final recommendation for this year, which is one we'll definitely need to consider for next year, will be a tipping fee increase. I just feel like that's something that you need to be aware of, you need to know about now, something that we need to continue to talk about throughout the years as we get ready for the following year. But like I said,
How much money, absolute dollars, are you talking about on the increase with closure and post-closure?
at least probably $2 next year.
No, I mean, total dollars.
Well, it'll be based on the tonnage, but I'm talking about $2 per ton.
Well,
So
the tons
you're talking
are the same.
about 300. If you're talking about 300,000 tons, $2. You're talking about another 600,000. Yes, sir.
Okay.
So that's what I'm saying. And we're looking at that for FY17.
Well, frankly, whether we do it today or next year, or whenever the wolf's at the door, I've had this conversation with Danny and about everybody around this table. We're so far under the market, and just on the basis of market equilibrium, talking about being competitive, $29 a ton is ridiculous. And I know that the increase in our tipping fee to county council would look like, and to their constituents and ours too, as a tax increase, and that's always hard to sell. But we're moving as forthwith with diversion techniques, maybe converting some of the MSW to a recyclable product, maybe even a fuel of some kind. That brings about technology costs money, new infrastructure. I mean, not today. We don't have to belabor the meeting today. That's why I asked you, are we about to wind up? And you opened the door a little bit. If not this year, then next year. As a board, I mean, we can't just leave Danny and his staff out to dry, swinging in the wind. We got to get behind a tipping fee increase. We're just too low. I mean, Charleston's at 66 and Brunswick at 50-some, 58. Georgetown's at 38, and blah, 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 right on down the line. I mean, I'm not saying we're giving away our services, but, in terms of our obligation to the taxpayers, we're supposed to be competitive in all things, including
diluting. How long was our rate been $29, Danny?
Well, 1995, it was $30.
Well, I know it used to be more than it is now, and that was when a dollar was worth more than it is now. So I just throw that out there for, whoever replaces you, Dr. Coakley, maybe even whoever replaces you, Lance. Or who replaces you, Danny? I don't know when you plan to leave, but at some point in time, we're gonna have to, raise the overall gate fee for
You
a
know,
number of reasons.
And I want to give it to staff. Their first obligation was to increase revenue, lower cost. And everybody around this table's beat this thing to death for the last 2 or 3 months. How do we do it? How do we get to where we're gonna go? And a lot of, disagreements. I mean, we've had a lot of heated discussions on what we should and should not do and how far we should go. But, you know, if we don't go out and we get this money out of, if we have to, by the end of the year, we get done with this budget, and they're still looking at cutting. Bill and I discussed cuts this morning. You know, we look at those things, but sooner or later, the tipping fee is gonna be some kind of increase. Now, we gonna do everything we can through this operating budget not to have that. But, we have been instructed by our great leader that we wasn't gonna get one. But, you know, so we working on it, but sooner or later, it's coming.
Yeah, but we're drawing down, I'm not saying we had too much money in that $1.2 million account, but the fact is, we're drawing down on it. That's where we're making up $400,000 to $500,000 of this deficit. And then, as Northfleet said, we're cutting down to the nub, on these, like the fuel contingency. Who knows when it'll shoot up again, and we all know what happens when that, goes. So, we about to run out of stuff that y'all can do with your little magic wand, you know what I'm saying? And, pretty soon, there's just gonna have to be a rate increase, overall rate increase.
But it looks like if we raise the rates and we're already losing business, if we're gonna be competitive in rates, then we need to get competitive in business. And that is gonna bring its own set of problems, I would imagine. But if we're gonna compete all the way around. Because when I compete, I do my best not to lose. So let me just say, I like the rates where they are. Speaking of competition, there were parts of the piggyback, I think you had said at one point we needed to fill with C&D to make that come out in the amount that we have budgeted. Obviously, competition in C&D, they did go by our door. If we don't want to have to pay for dirt to fill in the part that C&D will do, then we're going to have to get enough C&D to fill at least that area in without owing a lot of money, which I don't see any reason to do. And at some point, to keep from paying for the extra dirt to go in there and to be competitive with what we do, if we need to do that, at what point monetarily with the C&D are we going to be competitive and to get that what we need without actually having to come out with hundreds of thousands of dollars out of our pocket?
Well, you know, in-house, Bill's run all kinds of, Bill's good at analysis, so we look at Bill when it comes to analysis, because he get back there in his office, and next thing you know, he's coming out with a sheet of all kinds of analysis, which is good. We need that. And he's done analysis. You know, we could take in a tremendous amount of more C&D and not cost us any more labor than we currently got. Depreciation
Right,
on
we've
manpower.
already got the facilities,
In-
we've already got the
infrastructure's in
equipment and the
place.
people.
And we would be glad to look at that, to see where it is, where's that breaking point? If we lowered our tipping fee on our C&D, then what effects that would have on our operation? Would we get more? Maybe. But I'm just saying, do you do that? Now, I do think that if somebody has their own landfill, you're not gonna get theirs no matter what you lower it to.
Right.
So the question is, what's out there what's out there that's not somebody ain't got their landfill, and how much is that? So we'd be glad to look at that. I think,
I would appreciate it. I don't see any reason, particularly in the budget crisis we're in, to pay hundreds of thousands of dollars to fill in dirt when we could actually operate more efficiency and to fill it in with the C&D that was planned. So I would like to know where that is personally. The other thing, and I would,
Where you get that $100,000 figure? Oh, okay, thank you.
you can come back and tell me the exact one that it would cost to fill that hole in with dirt, rather than C&D. And it would be more than $100,000, I feel quite sure.
we spent some money on some dirt lately.
I imagine we could, yeah, we have spent a whole lot of money on dirt lately, so I would imagine it'd still be costly. The other thing is, I would like to, at some point, have a recycling committee meeting, because after we went to the Waccamaw Middle School, and we saw the two children that were nationally acclaimed that did an excellent presentation for that school. They were very knowledgeable. I think even we learned some things about what maybe we could do. One of the things I would like to do is offset and to have some more partners where our community, our environmental recycling and school projects are. After we came back from that, I looked on the internet, and those children had a website that was unbelievable. They had partners that donated a lot of money. They had people that paid to be on their website. And I think we need to look at a lot of that. I also did a lot of research. Just about every big box store, every grocery store, every fast food store has monies that they partner with or give out for the community, environmental conservation, school projects, and recycling, and just monies and grants that they give to nonprofits. And I think we qualify in every one of those categories. So I think there's a huge amount of partnering that we can do. And if these people, Wildlife Action used to get a $1,800 a year grant from Chick-fil-A. They got a grant from Walmart every year for Earth Day, for school projects, for recycling projects. And as many hundreds and thousands of these are in our area because of it being a tourist area, I think you would be amazed if you actually had someone work with all of these companies to see the amount of money, the partnering, and the ads, and the donations that we could actually garner to help us with those school projects. Thank you.
Does the board have any concerns, any questions about staff's recommendations?
No, I don't have any concerns. I would like to compliment staff on the work and the honesty that they have done in coming forward. If the board has a philosophy, and I don't think we've ever voted on this, but bringing in more money and cutting expenses, I would say that would pretty well cover how the board feels about it. But I think staff has done an excellent job in preparing for today.
I think you have too, and Mr. Jones, you have my vote on that philosophy.
The adjustment on the yard waste tipping fees, how does that compare? We talked about the other. Well, not only that, but, like we talked about Charleston, Brunswick, and Georgetown on the MSW tipping fee. Do we know yard waste, how we compare?
I've never really looked at the yard waste. I mostly dealt with MSW, but I know we had Chairman Lazarus brought a gentleman in here that wanted to take over our, build his own yard waste and composting facility. And one of his first things to us is that your price needs to be $30 a ton. You're too low. So therefore, we don't want y'all to take any more. If we build this facility, we don't want y'all to take any yard waste. And of course, we told them we were here for the public and we couldn't do that. That the public wanted to bring it to us then. He was talking in the $30 range.
I would strongly suggest if we change the price on yard waste, God Almighty, at least go to break even. If you're losing $3, don't raise it $2 and lose another one. I mean, you got to come back eventually and get even on this thing. That I can't grasp that. I mean, if anything, I'd go to 4 before I'd go to 2. We're in a crisis here, so I could not vote to raise it at least as much to where we're breaking even on it.
I agree with you, $4, Mr. Jones.
Okay, we'll look at it. Thank you.
And I say this with the fact that I'm going to be leaving the board. But I think you need to go ahead and start looking at the projection of what it would take for an across-the-board increase in tipping fees and how that's going to affect you over the next 2 to 5 years. You need to start looking at that holistically because based on our projections, it's been quite a few years since we've had a tipping fee increase, and in comparison to everybody else, we are really, at the bottom of the ladder. And even with all of the adjustments that you're making, it's inevitable. And you need to go ahead and do it, even if you have to do it to spread it out over a period of time. You need to go ahead and start looking at it. So you need to go ahead and start that projection.
Look at it maybe over a 5-year period.
Well, we've looked at it, we've discussed it, we know where we think we need to be. But we hadn't come up with a plan of how to get there yet. We even discussed it this morning. We looked at, well, do you take the whipping 1 time, or do you take it 4 times? Because you're gonna take a whipping. So do you take it 1 time and get it over with, or do you take it 1 time every for the next 4 years? So those things we're playing in place and talking about. So it's not that we're not talking about them, but definitely I'm with you, Mr. Chairman. We definitely need to start looking at it now because it's coming. Question is when.
Well, Lance, I'm afraid I can't do like I did my last organization. My last organization that I was coming out of, I increased the fees before I left, so I took all the heat. I can't do that in this situation, but that's what I did there. I increased them from executive order and took all the heat, but I can't do that for you.
We'll blame you anyway.
We can try.
I would also like to see us look at things like banning cardboard from the landfill and plastic bags. Plastic bags cost us an awful lot of money to handle, to pick up, mess up the machinery that we have, maintenance costs, labor costs. There are quite a few states now that have banned plastic bags. I think that would be a wonderful thing for our politicians to get on board with, for the state to get on board with. We've been asked by different organizations to do that. A lot of the stories that the children write are on banning those plastic bags and what they do that is detrimental to this environment. Cardboard would save quite a bit of landfill space. I think we also we have a lobbyist. I think he needs to be working on those things at the state level. I think we need to work on it at a local level. There's a responsibility. We're responsible to the taxpayer. We do a lot of programs that are teaching our children to reduce and recycle and reuse these things. A lot of what they come up with is cardboard and plastics. And I think we need to listen to some of the groups that we're training to come up and that want us to be responsible as adults and as stewards of the environment and of the Solid Waste Authority. So I think there are a lot of ways we can save landfill space. There are a lot of ways that we can save money, and it wouldn't cost anyone anything, and it's the responsible thing to do. So I think we need to be working on those areas as well.
I think that once we get the composition study done of the waste stream and know what it is, we can make better decisions. But that's a $50,000 cost next year. Got to figure out where we're going to get it from. But, once we make those decisions, but I went back and looked at Orange County, North Carolina. They have a composition study done of their waste stream every 4 years. Their average cardboard in their waste stream is about 10%. If you did that over the life of the landfill and you would ban cardboard from Odie County landfill, it would increase the landfill life space here by about 3.5 years.
Is that HDR's number? I mean, you said
You go on the websites, come off the EPA. It's a study that was done in Orange County, North Carolina.
no, I mean, the $50,000, you said we got a study next
I
year.
asked a couple of people what you charge to do it, and they said 25 to 50,000.
Okay, and HDR is not doing that in their current contract.
No,
I remember they had 3 phases. One of them was to revise the plan, and one was to help sell the plan. What's the third plan?
that's the part where we do the RFI, request for information.
Okay. Which would come first, the RFI or the analysis?
You need the analysis to know what your waste stream's made up of before you can do anything.
So we would do waste stream analysis sometime in next fiscal year for some $25,000 to $50,000.
Gotta find the money, but yeah,
Sir?
gotta find the money.
Yeah, if we can find the money, or just draw it out of that construction account. That had $100,000 swing in it. And then we would do, what do you call it, a letter of interest?
Yeah, you could tell the people what the waste stream is that you've got, so they know what, if their technology would work with it.
Yeah. When would we get to actually getting prices to do, or quotes or something? When would that come?
Well, next year's, this budget that we're getting ready to get approved, July.
Last year.
The study will be in that money, so that'll probably take 3 or 4 months to get through that process. And I would think that somewhere at the end of that fiscal year would be when we would send something formal out.
You mean an LOI? The letter of interest or an RFP?
No, a letter of interest, because we really don't know
Yeah.
what we want right now.
So it would be July of 18, that we'd go out with a letter of interest.
End of 2015.
Yeah, I've got the years wrong here. We're in 2015 now. So next year we'll spend time analyzing stuff, and that would take us to the end of 2016. So sometime between July of 2017 and June of 2018, we would go to an RFP or Q or whatever you want to call it. Okay, thank you.
Okay, well, we'll move forward then with putting together our budget and implementing the recommendations from staff and from the board. And like I said, we'll have a complete budget for you that we'll review at our budget workshop on March 11th. I appreciate everybody's input. Like I said, this helps us tremendously in putting together our budget. Thank you.
We didn't do anything. You already had it fixed out.
Well, but the questions and the conversations, I think it helps. It really does help us know what direction you want us to go.
Mike, Mel did a good job.
Okay.
What time we get any information back and y'all makes us think out of the box?
What time is the workshop on the 11th?
I don't think we've set a time.
I didn't have it.
We can set one. It doesn't make, it's morning, afternoon. It doesn't make any difference. Whatever works better for everyone.
Is that what month?
March 11th? That might be a Wednesday as well.
It is.
Is it?
I'm in town.
We can do morning and provide breakfast, or we can do afternoon and provide lunch.
For evening with
Cecil
dinner.
does a great job.
I'd rather do morning.
Me too.
I've got a past president's
We have a
meeting
vacancy.
chamber at lunch
We just got a
that day
vacancy on
for
staff.
voting.
So morning would be better?
Yeah, I've got a vote.
Maybe the
I need to
next one
attend
can
at noon that day.
Okay.
For past
So
president.
would the morning work on the 11th then? What time? I was gonna say 8 o'clock, 8:30?
Ms. Reed.
Well, we've got to get Mr. Thompson out of here by lunchtime, so I was trying,
What
All
time
right.
the meeting, Lance?
want to say 9? Can we do 9?
My meeting's at noon.
9, okay, we'll say 9 o'clock.
Only for Lance.
Really, there's not that much to go over. I mean, it's pretty much settled right here. And
We'll go over just any line item increases, decreases, and those, we'll go over more of the changes, you know, where we had to increase or decrease. So,
okay.
March 11th at 9.
I'm giving me a 13-hour day.
Another 13.
And we'll provide breakfast.
Anytime.
Get up for the chickens.
Exactly.
We have a clear conscience, we can sleep, Mr. Dillon.
Come on, Miss Creech. Oh, I tell you, staff, you did a great job.
Great
Really
job.
did.
Thank you.
Outstanding.
Bill, what happened to your face? Dermatologist. Okay. Been there.
Check with Miss Kathy and see what she tells you.
You gonna adjourn us?
Anything else? Nothing, we stand adjourned.
Meeting adjourned.
Thank you.